is point slope form. So in the past, we've been using slope intercept form to graph. That's the y equals mx plus b, as you know. So now we're going to talk about another form, which is called point slope form. And of course, in order to put something in point slope form, you can actually tell by the title, you're going to need to have a point and a slope. Okay, so that's why it's called point slope form. So just to recall what we already know, okay, this is slope intercept form here. And of course, again, by the title, you can tell you need to know the slope and the y-intercept. So this one, you'll need to know a point and a slope. So this is what point slope looks like. And basically, you're going to be filling in three numbers. All right, so the three numbers would be this, the slope, which is m, and then your x of 1 and y sub 1. So those are the three numbers you'll be filling in. The other two, which is this one here and that one, they will just stay where they are. Okay, they'll just stay stationary. They're not going to be changed, right? So again, for point slope form, you're only going to be filling in those three numbers. All right, so let's start off with how do you write an equation in point slope form? So please write this down. So example 1 says write an equation in point slope form. And so this is where on your test and on your quiz that you have to make sure you are following directions. So you can't take this problem and put it into slope intercept form when it specifically says to write the equation in point slope form. They give you a point, they tell you it passes through this point. So technically, this is your x1 and this is your y1. And they tell you the slope is 2, so now I know m. So again, all I have to do is put those numbers into their proper places. Okay, that's all you're going to do. Point slope form is probably one of the easiest forms that we will cover. Okay, it's even easier than slope intercept form. So when I do that, this is what you have. Here's my y1, here's my m, and there's my x of 1. Now, you don't go any further because a lot of students want to then immediately start doing something else like distributing and all of that. You do not distribute. Okay, so I'm going to put up here, do not distribute. Because once you distribute, you are taking it out of point slope form. Now, the good thing about point slope form, once you have it in this form, if I asked you to put it now into slope intercept form, you could just take this and solve it for y. Okay, so that means then you would distribute and move the 3 to the other side. So that's the good thing. Once you have it in this form, it's very easy to go to slope intercept form. All right, here's the U try. So now you're going to do this one. So here's your point, here's your slope, and you're going to drop the numbers into point slope form. Okay, so try that one, and then we'll test out and see how you did. Now just keep in mind, if there's a negative as a coordinate and there's a minus sign, you know that will change to a plus. Okay, so pay attention to your signs if that happens. So this is really what you should have as your final answer. And really you can go straight to the final answer. You wouldn't need to really write the minus and negative. Okay, you should know that minus and negative is a positive, right? So again, it's just a matter of dropping those in their proper places. This and this, they will just stay exactly where they are, right? All right, let's move on. So what if you're looking at a graph? So I'm giving you the different situations that you're going to see on your homework. So that's if you're given a point and a slope. But what if you're just given a graph? Okay, so let's take a look. Well, actually, this is an equation. So graph the equation, but it says graph this equation. So what we're going to do, if you're given a graph, what you have to do, here's your equation right here. So you got to really pick out the slope number. We know that's that number 2/3. And you'll pick out the point. Okay, well, you see the 2 and the 3, they got to make sure they're in the right order. So you got to understand, if this is a -3, then that means that's a positive x. If this is a +2, that means it was a -2 before it changed to a positive. Okay, so basically just take the opposite side of what you see in the problem. This is where you start. Please write this down. You start with the point. Just like in slope-intercept form, we start with B. So here you're going to start with the point. Make a note to yourself, start with the point. So when you start with the point, okay, so the point is 3, -2, which is right here. Then you're going to do your slope from there. Okay, so that means you can go up 2 over 3, and there's your other point. And then start at the point again. You can go down 2 and then over 3. Okay, you can do a double negative, down and left, which makes it a positive 2/3. Now in this case, we could only do 3 points. Okay. All right, any questions on how you graph using point slope form? All right, so now you're going to try. All right, so pick out your point. Okay, look at the problem, get your x coordinate. The x coordinate is over there with the x, the y coordinate is over there with the y. Make sure you use the opposite side or the opposite operation that you see in front of it. And then, of course, your slope is the 3/4. All right. So you should have picked out the point to be -1, +1. Okay, that is your point where you're going to start. Notice since that's a +1, this becomes negative. You just take the opposite side. This says -1, so that's going to be a positive for the y, and that's where you start. So your starting point would be at -1, 1, and then you do your slope up 3 over 4 and down 3 to the left 4. All right, any questions on that? How to graph if you have the equation graphing in point slope form? Okay. All right, now write an equation from the graph. So now we're just going to do the opposite. So here it says they just identified 2 points for you. Okay, identify 2. And we're going to do both. Because the thing is, when you have 2 points, you can write the 2 equations from those points. Yes, they are still equivalent because if you solve them for y, you'll see both of them are equal. Okay, so but we're going to leave them in point slope form. So here's my point, -1, 3. We'll start with that one first. And since it's in point slope form, and I know my point, my first point will be -1, 3. What am I missing? I'm missing the slope. So I can take these 2 points that they have identified, make my triangle, okay? And of course it's going to be a negative what? This is 2, and so it's going to be -1, is that right? So my slope is -1, so that's not going to change for both points. Okay, so even when I do the next point, which will be 1, 1, my slope will still be -1. All right, so I'm going to write both equations, so let's do that. So here's my x of 1, here's my y sub 1, and I have my m. So when I'm looking at this, I'm just going to drop the numbers in their proper places. So I'm going to write y minus 3, that's my y sub 1, equals the negative slope. Okay, I don't need to write the 1, parenthesis, x plus 1. Okay, so there's one of your equations. Now, sometimes you might see answers written because it is just being multiplied by -1. That is probably the only time that you might see it written this way. They'll just go ahead and distribute it to -1. I will accept either answer. Okay, so I'm just letting you know, though, if like there's a multiple choice question sometimes, you might see that they did just go ahead and distribute the -1. Same thing if the slope was a +1, you just wouldn't even have the parentheses. You would just have y minus 3 equals x plus 1. They would just drop the times 1, okay, because we don't write 1 as a coefficient. All right, so let's do the next one. So this will be y minus 1 equals, again, that negative, and then x minus 1. Okay, that will be for the second point. So I'm going to call this point 1 and point 2 because there are 2 points on this particular graph. Okay, now you try the next one. Okay, you're going to try this one and you're going to do the exact same thing. Find your slope. You need to know what your slope is. And then you're going to have the point 24. And then you'll do the same slope, but with the point 11. Okay, and tell me what the equation is. Okay, I'll give you a second to do that. All right, so knowing that the slope is 3, who can tell me what the first, we'll call this the first one. Who can tell me the answer for the first one? Okay, amazing. All right, very good. And then for the second one, we will have what? All right. -1. Very good. Okay. Again, it's a very easy form to do. And like I said, you don't distribute, you don't do anything unless you're asked to put it into another form. All right, let's move on. I think we have another one more section here. So what if you're given 2 points? Okay. It says write an equation of the line that passes through these 2 points. And again, we're going to be putting this into point slope form. So there are 2 steps you have to take because we have to know, in order to put it in point slope form, we have to know the slope. Okay. And we do already know how to get the slope when we have 2 points. We have to use the slope formula. Okay. So we're going to use the slope formula. So that's step 1 to find out what the slope is. Okay. So go ahead and write that down. You have to know what the slope is because we're putting this in point slope form. So you would just do your slope formula, y2 minus y1, m equals, of course. Please start off with m equals and not just numbers. All right, so that's number 1. We have to get what the slope is. Now, once we know the slope, in this case, is -2, then we can do like we just did a few minutes ago. M equals -2. Now I'm going to use the point -2, 3 to write one of my equations. And I'm going to use the point 1, -3. So for the first one, I'll have y minus 3 equals -2 times x plus 2, because that's a negative. So minus a negative is a positive. And then y plus 3 equals -2 times x minus 1. Okay. All right, so you're going to try this one, and then we'll be done. Okay, so go ahead, do your slope number, make sure your slope is right, and then give me the 2 equations in point slope form. All right, so -1/2 is our slope, and then you would just simply take your -1/2 and use the point -5, 4, and use the point -1, 2. All right, so the first one, you should have y minus 4 equals -1/2 times x plus 5. And for the second one, y minus 2 equals -1/2 times x plus 2. All right, how did we do on that? All right, great. Very good. At the top of page 13, you might want to go ahead and write what point slope form looks like. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. So you, in this particular assignment that for classwork, you have an example of how to take it if you have a point and a slope. Okay, how to graph in point slope form. Okay, that's the next one. And then when you move over to the next page, oh, sorry about that. Same thing if you're given 2 points on a graph. Now, of course, they didn't just read the coordinates for you. You have to read the coordinates yourself and give me 2 equations. Okay, so we just did that as well. And then what happens if you have 2 points? We just finished up. That was our last example. Find the slope first, and then put each one in point slope form. When you get to this page here, okay, everybody go to this page. This is what page number? 15. Okay, on page 15, make sure you write at the top, show work in spiral. Okay, again, directions are important. Okay, so for this page, you're going to show your work in your spiral. So notice that they do give you a point and a slope. So what, and I'll do this one with you. So, and of course, you're going to be doing it in your spiral. I'm just going to write up here. If I put this in point slope form, I'm going to have y minus 2 equals 2 times x minus 3. But notice all of these answers are written in what form? Slope-intercept form. So this is where now you're going to take this and you're going to solve it for y. That's why you have to show your work in your spiral. So then you'll just say y minus 2 equals 2x minus 6, and then add the 2 to the other side. So you have y equals 2x minus 4. Okay, so just make sure, and of course that would be that one. Just make sure for this page that you are showing your work in your spiral notebook. Okay, let's move on to this page because I always like to let you know what you're doing. Okay, this is where you have 2 points. So what you're going to do with those 2 points, again, you're going to first find your slope. That was the last example we did in your foldable. Okay, and then put them into point slope form. Okay, once you do that, and you only have to this time only choose 1 point to put it into point slope form. You don't need to give me equation for both points. Okay, so I'm just going to say use 1 point. You're going to use that 1 point to put it into point slope form and then solve it for y. Okay, so you don't need to do 2 points. You only need to write 1 point into point slope form. Yes, so this is the second page that needs to be done in your spiral notebook. So please write spiral notebook. Okay.